Chapter 2. I have a word with Chaos. Would you be surprised to learn that things went badly from there? I didn't think so. Our first casualties were Felix's penguins. The cryosphinxes blew fire at the unfortunate birds, and they melted into puddles of water. No! Felix cried. The room rumbled, much stronger this time. Khufu screamed and jumped on Carter's head, knocking him to the floor. Under different circumstances that would have been funny, but I realized Khufu had just saved my brother's life. Where Carter had been standing, the floor dissolved, marble tiles crumbling as if broken apart by an invisible jackhammer. The area of disruption snaked across the room, destroying everything in its path, sucking artifacts into the ground and chewing them to bits. Yes, snaked was the right word. The destruction slithered exactly like a serpent, heading straight for the back wall in the Book of Overcoming Apophis. Scroll! I shouted. No one seemed to hear. Carter was still on the floor, trying to pry Khufu off his head. Felix knelt in shock at the puddles of his penguins, but Walt and Alyssa tried to pull him away from the fiery cryosphinxes. I slipped my wand from my belt and shouted the first word of power that came to mind. Droa! A golden hieroglyph, the command for boundary, blazed in the air. A wall of light flashed between the display case and the advancing line of destruction. I'd often used this spell to separate quarreling initiates or protect the snack cupboard from late-night nom-nom raids, but I never tried it for something so important. As soon as the invisible jackhammer reached my shield, the spell began to fall apart. The disturbance spread up the wall of the light, shaking it to pieces. I tried to concentrate, but a much more powerful force, chaos itself, was working against me, invading my mind and scattering my magic. In a panic, I realized I couldn't let go. I was locked in a battle I couldn't win. Apophis was shredding my thoughts as easily as he shredded the Thor. Walt knocked the wand out of my hands. Darkness washed over me. I slumped into Walt's arms. When my vision cleared, my hands were burned and steaming. I was too shocked to feel the pain. The Book of Overcoming Apophis was gone. Nothing remained except a pile of rubble and a massive hole in the wall, as if a tank had smashed through. Despair threatened to close up my throat, but my friends gathered around me. Walt held me steady. Carter drew his sword. Khufu showed his fangs and barked at the cryosphinxes. Alyssa wrapped her arms around Felix, who was sobbing into a sleeve. He had quickly lost courage when his penguins were taken away. So that's it? I shouted at the cryosphinxes. Burn up the scroll and run away as usual? Or are you so afraid to show yourself in person? More laughter rolled through the room. The cryosphinxes stood unmoving in the doorway, but figurines and jewelry rattled in the display cases. With a painful creaking sound, the golden baboon statue that Khufu had been chatting up suddenly turned its head.
But I am everywhere.
The serpent spoke through the statue's mouth.
I can destroy anything you value, and anyone you value.
Khufu wailed in outrage. He launched himself at the baboon and knocked it over. It melted into a steaming pool of gold. A different statue came to life. A gilded wooden pharaoh with a hunting spear. Its eyes turned the color of blood. Its carved mouth twisted into a smile.
Your magic is weak, Sadie Kane. Human civilization has grown as old and rotten. I will swallow the sun god and plunge your world into darkness. The sea of chaos will consume you all.
As if the energy were too much for it to contain, the pharaoh statue burst. Its pedestal disintegrated, and another line of evil jackhammer magic snaked across the room, churning up the floor tiles. It headed for a display against the east wall, a small golden cabinet. Save it, said a voice inside me. Possibly my subconscious, or possibly the voice of Isis, my patron goddess, which I had thought so many times it was hard to be sure. I remembered what the face in the wall had told me. Go for the golden box. That'll give a clue about what you need. The box! I yelled. Stop him! My friends stared at me. From somewhere outside, another explosion shook the building. Chunks of plaster rained from the ceiling.
Are these children the best you could send against me?
Apophis spoke from an ivory shabti in the nearest case, a miniature sailor on a tow boat.
Walt Stone. You're the luckiest. Even if you survive tonight, your sickness will kill you before my great victory. You won't have to watch your world destroyed.
Walt staggered. Suddenly I was supporting him. My burned hands hurt so badly I had to fight down a surge of nausea. The line of destruction trundled across the floor, still heading for the golden cabinet. Alyssa thrust out her staff and barked a command. For a moment the floor stabilized, smoothing into a solid sheet of grey stone. Then new cracks appeared, and the force of chaos blasted its way through.
Brave Alyssa, the serpent said. The earth you love will dissolve into chaos. You have no place to stand.
Alyssa's staff burst into flames. She screamed and threw it aside. Stop it! Felix yelled. He smashed the glass case with his staff and demolished the miniature sailor along with a dozen other shabti. Apophis's voice simply moved to a jade amulet of Isis on a nearby mannequin.
Ah, little Felix. I find you amusing. Perhaps I'll keep you as a pet, like those ridiculous birds you love. I wonder how long you'll last before your sanity crumbles.
Felix threw his wand and knocked over the mannequin. The crumbling trail of chaos was now halfway to the golden cabinet. He's after that box, I managed to say. Save the box! Granted, it wasn't the most inspiring call to battle, but Carter seemed to understand. He jumped in front of the advancing chaos, stabbing his sword into the floor. His blade cut through the marble tile like ice cream. A blue line of magic extended to the either side. Carter's own version of a force field. The line of disruption slammed against the barrier and stalled.
Poor Carter Kane.
The Sapant's voice was all around us now, jumping from artifact to artifact, each one bursting from the power of chaos.
Your leadership is doomed. Everything you tried to build will crumble. You will lose the ones you love the most.
Carter's blue defensive line began to flicker. If I didn't help him quickly... Apophis! I yelled. Why wait to destroy me? Do it now, you overgrown rat snake! A hiss echoed through the room. Perhaps I should mention that one of my many talents is making people angry. Apparently it worked on snakes too. The floor settled. Carter released his shielding spell and almost collapsed. Khufu, bless his baboon wits, leapt to the golden cabinet, picked it up and bounded off with it. When Apophis spoke again, his voice hardened with anger.
Very well, City Kane. It's time to die.
The two ram-headed sphinxes stared, their mouths glowing with flames. Then they lunged straight at me. Fortunately, one of them slipped in a puddle of penguin water and skidded off to the left. The other would have ripped my throat out had it not been tackled by a timely camel. Yes, an actual full-size camel. If you find that confusing, just think how the Creo-Sphinx must have felt. Where did the camel come from, you ask? I've mentioned Walt's collection of amulets. Two of them some disgusting camels. I'd met them before, so I was less than excited when a ton of dromedary flesh flew across my line of sight, then plowed into the Sphinx and collapsed on top of it. The Sphinx growled in outrage as it tried to free itself. The camel grunted and farted. Hindenburg, I said. Only one camel could possibly fart that badly. What? Why in the world? Sorry, he yelled. Wrong amulet. The technique worked at any rate. The camel wasn't much of a fighter, but it was quite heavy and clumsy. The Creo-Sphinx snarled and clawed at the floor, trying unsuccessfully to push the camel off, but Hindenburg just splayed his legs, made alarmed honking sounds and let loose gas. I moved to Walt's side and tried to get my bearings. The room was quite literally in chaos. Tendrils of red lightning arced between exhibits. The floor was crumbling. The walls cracked. Artifacts were coming to life and attacking my friends. Carter fended off the other Creo-Sphinx, stabbing it with his khopesh, but the monster parried his strikes with his horns and breathed fire. Felix was surrounded by a tornado of canopic jars that pummeled him from every direction as he swatted them with his staff. An army of tiny Shabti had surrounded Alyssa, who was chanting desperately, using her earth magic to keep the room in one piece. The statue of Anubis chased Khufu around the room, smashing things with its fists, and our brave baboon cradled the golden cabinet. All around us the power of chaos grew. I felt it in my ears like a coming storm. The presence of Apophis was shaking apart the entire museum. How could I help all my friends at once? Protect that gold cabinet and keep the museum from collapsing on top of us? Sadie, Walt prompted. What's the plan? The fast Creo-Sphinx finally pushed Hindenburg off its back. It turned and blew fire at the camel, which let loose one final fart and shrank back into a harmless gold amulet. Then the Creo-Sphinx turned toward me. It did not look pleased. Walt, I said. Guard me. Sure. He eyed the Creo-Sphinx uncertainly. Will you do what? Good question, I thought. We have to protect that cabinet, I said. It's some sort of clue. We have to restore Ma'at or this building will implode and we'll all die. How do we restore Ma'at? Instead of answering, I concentrated. I lowered my vision into the duat. It's hard to describe what it's like to experience the world on many levels at once. It's a bit like looking through a 3D glasses and seeing hazy, colourful auras around things, except the auras don't always match the objects and the images are constantly shifting. Magicians have to be careful when they look into the duat. Best case scenario, you get mildly nauseous. Worst case scenario, your brain will explode. In the duat, the room was filled with writhing coils of a giant red snake, the magic of Apophis slowly expanding and encircling my friends. I almost lost my concentration along with my dinner. Isis, I called. A little help? The goddess's strength surged through me. I stretched out my senses and saw my brother battling the Creo-Sphinx. Standing in Carter's place was the warrior god Horus, his sword blazing with light. Swirling around Felix, the canopic jars were the hearts of evil spirits, shadowy figures that clawed and snapped at our young friend, though Felix had a surprisingly powerful aura in the duat. His vivid purple glow seemed to keep the spirits at bay. Alyssa was surrounded by a dust storm in the shape of a giant man. As she chanted, Geb the earth god lifted his arms and held up the ceiling. The Shabti army surrounding her blazed like a wildfire. Khufu looked no different in the duat, but as he leapt around the room evading the Anubis statue, the golden cabinet he was carrying flapped open. Inside was pure darkness, as if it were full of octopus ink. I wasn't sure what that meant, but then I looked at Walt and gasped. In the duat he was shrouded in flickering grey linen, mummy cloth. His flesh was transparent. His bones were luminous as if he were a living X-ray. His curse, I thought. He's marked for death. Even worse, the Creo-Sphinx facing him was the center of the chaos storm. Tendrils of red lightning arced from his body, its ram face changed into the head of Apophis, with yellow serpentine eyes and dripping fangs. It lunged at Walt, but before it could strike, Walt threw an amulet. Golden chains exploded in the monster's face, wrapping around its snout. The Creo-Sphinx stumbled and thrashed like a dog in a muzzle. Sadie, it's all right. Walt's voice sounded deeper and more confident, as if he were elder in the duat. "Speak your spell. Hurry." The Criosphinx flexed its jaws. The gold chains groaned. The other Criosphinx had backed Carter against a wall. Felix was on his knees, his purple aura flailing in a swell of dark spirits. Alyssa was losing a battle against the crumbling room as chunks of the ceiling fell around her. The Anubis statue grabbed Khufu's tail and held him upside down, while the baboon howled and wrapped his arms around the gold cabinet. Now or never. I had to restore order. I channeled the power of Isis, drawing so deeply on my own magic reserves I could feel my soul start to burn. I forced myself to focus, and I spoke the most powerful of all divine words. Ma'at. The hieroglyph burned in front of me, small and bright like a miniature sun. "Good," Walt said. "Keep at it." Somehow he managed to pull in the chains and grab the Sphinx's snout. While the creature bore down on him with all its force, Walt's strange grey aura was spreading across the monster's body like an infection. The Criosphinx hissed and writhed. I caught a whiff of decay like the air from a tomb, so strong that I almost lost my concentration. "Sadie," Walt urged, "maintain the spell." I focused on the hieroglyph. I channeled all my energy into that symbol for order and creation. The word shone brighter. The coils of the serpent burned away like fog in sunlight. The two Criosphinxes crumbled to dust. The canopic jars fell and shattered. The Anubis statue dropped Khufu on his head. The army of Shapti froze around Alyssa, and earth magic spread through the room, sealing cracks and shoring up walls. I felt Apophis retreating deeper into the duat, hissing in anger. Then I promptly collapsed. "I told you she could do it," said a kindly voice. My mother's voice. But of course that was impossible. She was dead, which meant I spoke with her only occasionally and only in the underworld. My vision returned hazy and dim. Two women hovered over me. One was my mum, her blonde hair clipped back, her deep blue eyes sparkling with pride. She was transparent, as ghosts tend to be, but her voice was warm and very much alive. "It isn't the end yet, Sadie. You must carry on." Next to her stood Isis in a white silky gown, her wings of rainbow light flickering behind her. Her hair was glossy black, woven with strands of diamonds. Her face was as beautiful as my mom's, but more queenly, less warm. Don't misunderstand, I knew from sharing Isis's thoughts that she cared for me in her own way, but gods are not human. They have trouble thinking of us as more than useful tools or cute pets. To gods, a human lifespan doesn't seem much longer than that of an average jabal. "I would not have believed it," Isis said. "The last magician to summon Ma'at was Hatshepsut herself, and even she could only do it while working on a thick beard." I had no idea what that meant. I decided I didn't want to know. I tried to move but couldn't. I felt as if I were floating at the bottom of a bathtub, suspended in warm water, the two women's faces rippling at me from just above the surface. "Sadie, listen carefully," my mother said. "Don't blame yourself for the deaths. When you make your plan, your father will object. You must convince him. Tell him it's the only way to save the souls of the dead. Tell him..." Her expression turned grim. "Tell him it's the only way he'll see me again. You must succeed, my sweet." I wanted to ask what she meant, but I couldn't seem to speak. Isis touched my forehead. Her fingers were as cold as snow. "We must not tax her any farther. Farewell for now, Sadie. The time rapidly approaches when we must join together again. You are strong, even stronger than your mother. Together we will rule the world." "You mean together we will defeat Apophis?" my mother corrected. "Of course," Isis said. "That's what I meant." The faces blurred together. They spoke in a single voice. "I love you." A blizzard swept across my eyes. My surroundings changed and I was standing on a dark graveyard with Anubis. Not the musty old jackal-headed god as he appeared in Egyptian Tumat, but Anubis as I usually saw him. A teenage boy with warm brown eyes, tousled black hair, and a face that was ridiculously, annoyingly gorgeous. I mean, please, being a god, he had an unfair advantage. He could look like anything he wanted. Why did he always have to appear in this form that twisted my insides into pretzels? "Wonderful," I managed to say. "If you're here, I must be dead." Anubis smiled. "Not dead, though you came close. That was a risky move." A burning sensation started in my face and worked its way down my neck. I wasn't sure if it was embarrassment, anger, or delight at seeing him. "Where have you been?" I demanded. 6 months, not a word." His smile melted. "They wouldn't let me see you." "Who wouldn't let you?" "There are rules," he said. "Even now they're watching. But you're close enough to death that I can manage a few moments. I need to tell you, you have the right idea. Look at what isn't there. It's the only way you might survive." "Right," I grumbled. "Thanks for not speaking in riddles." The warm sensation reached my heart. It began to beat and I suddenly realized I'd been without a heartbeat since I passed out. That probably wasn't good. "Sadie, there's something else." Anubis' voice became watery. His image began to fade. "I need to tell you..." "Tell me in person," I said. "None of this death vision nonsense." "I can't, they won't let me." "You still sound like a little boy. You're a god, aren't you? You can bloody well do what you like." Anger smoldered in his eyes. Then, to my surprise, he laughed. "I'd forgotten how irritating you are. I'll try to visit, briefly. We have something to discuss." He reached out and brushed the side of my face. "You're waking now. Goodbye, Sadie." "Don't leave." I grasped his hand and held it against my cheek. The warmth spread throughout my body. Anubis faded away. My eyes flew open. "Don't leave!" My bound hands were bandaged, and I was gripping a hairy baboon paw. Khufu looked down at me rather confused. "Ah!" Oh, fab, I was flirting with a monkey. I sat up groggily. Carter and our friends gathered around me. The room hadn't collapsed, but the entire King Tut exhibit was in ruins. I had a feeling we would not be invited to join the Friends of the Dallas Museum anytime soon. "What happened?" I stammered. "How long—" "You were dead for 2 minutes," Carter said, his voice shaky. "I mean, no heartbeat, Sadie. I thought... I was afraid..." He choked up. Poor boy. He really would have been lost without me. "Ow, Carter, don't pinch!" "You summoned my art," Alyssa said in amazement. "That's like... impossible." I suppose it was rather impressive. Using divine words to create an object like an animal or a chair, or a sword, that's hard enough. Summoning an element like fire or water is even trickier. But something a concept, like order, that's just not done. At the moment, however, I was in too much pain to appreciate my own amazingness. I felt as if I'd just summoned an anvil and dropped it on my head. "Lucky try," I said. "What about the golden cabinet?" "Ah!" Khufu gestured proudly to the gilded box, which sat nearby, safe and sound. "Good, baboon," I said. "Extra Cheerios for you tonight." Walt frowned. "But the Book of Overcoming Apophis was destroyed. How will a cabinet help us? You said it was some kind of clue?" I found it hard to look at Walt without feeling guilty. My heart had just been torn between him and Anubis for months now, and it just wasn't fair of Anubis to pop into my dreams looking all hot and immortal, when poor Walt was risking his life to protect me and getting weaker by the day. I remembered how he had looked in the duat, in his ghostly grey mummy linen. No, I couldn't think about that. I forced myself to concentrate on the golden cabinet. "Look at what isn't there," Anubis had said. Bloody gods and the bloody riddles. The face in the wall. Uncle Vinny had told me the box would give us a hint about how to defeat Apophis, if I was smart enough to understand it. "I'm not sure what it means yet," I admitted. "If the Texans let us take it back to Brooklyn House..." A horrible realization settled over me. There were no more sounds of explosions outside. Just eerie silence. "The Texans!" I yelped. "What's happened to them?" Felix and Alyssa bolted for the exit. Carter and Walt helped me to my feet, and we ran after them. The guards had all disappeared from their stations. We reached the museum foyer, and I saw columns of white smoke outside the glass walls, rising from the sculpture garden. "No," I murmured. No! We tore across the street. The well-kept lawn was now a crater as big as an Olympic pool. The bottom was littered with melted metal sculptures and chunks of stone. Tunnels that had once led into the 51st Gnome's headquarters had collapsed like a giant anthill some bully had stepped on. Around the rim of the crater were bits of smoking evening wear, smashed plates of tacos, broken champagne glasses, and the shattered staffs of magicians. "Don't blame yourselves for the deaths," my mother had said. I moved in a daze to the remains of the patio. Half the concrete slab had slacked and slid into the crater. A charred fiddle lay in the mud next to a gleaming bit of silver. Carter stood next to me. We should search," he said. "There might be survivors." I swallowed back a sob. I wasn't sure how, but I sensed the truth with absolute certainty. "There aren't any." The Texas magicians had welcomed us and supported us. J.D. Grissom had shaken my hand and wished me luck before running off to save his wife. But we'd seen the work of Apophis and other gnomes. Carter had warned J.D. The serpent's minions don't leave any survivors. I knelt down and picked up the gleaming piece of silver. A half-melted Lone Star belt buckle. "They're dead," I said. "All of them."